I had previously done a video on the rise and fall of the Canadian Big Shiny Tunes compilation albums. One of the groups featured in that video was Bran 3000, who appeared on the second edition of Big Shiny Tunes. Some people consider it to be the best album from the series. I did see quite a few comments asking if I could cover the band, so here we are. Bran 3000 would of course be best known for their 1997 hit Drinkin in LA, but did you know one of the people who's prominently featured in the track tried to be erased by the record label? That's what we're going to explore in today's video. Formed in Montreal, Bran 3000 is a Canadian rock and hip-hop group. The origin of the group would begin with James DeSalvo, who in the mid-90s was working at a video production company named Propaganda Films, where his colleagues included the likes of Spike Jonze and Michael Condrey. He also had a side gig as a DJ. It was in 1994 DeSalvo was going through some financial troubles, and he had recently done some work with a French-Canadian artist, Jean Leloup, and Branford Marsalis, and he had received a royalty check. But rather than saving the money, DeSalvo wanted to build a studio in his Montreal apartment. It was around this time an old buddy of his from the Montreal club scene named E.P. Bergen was planning on going to New York City and invited his friend to come on the trip. As the pair were one day walking through Washington Square Park, they talked about setting up a musical project together and came up with the name Bran 3000. The name really had no meaning and it was just basically gibberish. It was on that trip they headed to Sam Ash to buy some sampling equipment, and upon returning to Montreal in the hip neighborhood of Mile End, they began working on what would be their debut album titled Glee. It would have a wide cast of collaborators, including a street performer that they just came across one day who could play the clarinet pretty well, and they included him on 2 songs, including Couchsurfer and a track named Supermodel. Their debut album, Glee, would have over 30 guest musicians and span multiple genres. One of the musicians who guest starred on the record, most notably appearing on the track Drinkin in LA, singing the hook, would be Stéphane Moray. At the time she was going to law school, she was also teaching aerobics and working as a part-time singer. She had originally envisioned becoming a dancer, studying ballet at a young age, but things wouldn't quite work out after she blew her knee out. After that, she still needed a creative outlet, so she turned to singing. She fronted a Canadian house music project called Shauna Davis, with their most memorable hits being Try My Love and Get Away. She had a friend who was friends with E.P. Bergen, and he was looking for a singer to appear on the song Drinkin in LA. She would tell Q on CBC with Tom Power that she almost never recorded the track because it was the middle of winter and it was minus 40 outside. She would recall, "If I had a cell phone back then, I would have canceled. But in the 90s, if you said you were going to be at a place at a certain time, you had to show up because there was no other way to contact anyone. I show up at the studio, Bran Van founder James shows me like chicken scratch lyrics, and then I hear the guitar riff. I'm like, wow, this is going to work. I down a beer and then I sing the chorus. She would drink the beer because she was tired, and the members would convince her that it would actually perk her up. She came up with the melody and the bridge, and the rest was history. The song would be mixed in February of '97 and released the following month. Drinkin in LA would be the last song written for Glee, and it was sometime in the 90s Salvo woke up one morning on a lawn in West Hollywood and asked himself, what the hell am I doing drinking in LA? And that's where the inspiration for the song came from. DeSalvo would know right away that they had a massive hit on their hands, telling the Toronto Star. It's almost like one of those animated movies where a blue bird swings by over real life footage. It's cheesy, but I know in my heart it was a hit. DeSalvo would soon take a trip to South by Southwest in 1997, and it was during that trip he brought cassettes with the word Glee in Helvetica font on them, with his Montreal 514 area code number written on it as well. On the last day of South by Southwest, he just happened to bump into Moby and gave him the tape. A few weeks later, he ended up getting a call from Geffen Records, who wanted to talk to the group and potentially sign them. Geffen, however, wanted to see them perform first, but the problem was there was no band. They were a studio act. They did, however, manage to stall Geffen for about 6 weeks while they assembled some musicians to play a live showcase. There would be 9 core members in the band, but each gig would see a different number of people perform on stage. Sometimes they would just meet people on the street and invite them to perform at their shows. The whole bidding war and negotiations with the group would last several weeks, and the band would eventually sign with Capitol Records, and they would be represented by a guy named Gary Gersh, who had helped Nirvana become mainstream in the early 90s. He managed to get Drinkin in LA on legendary rock station K-Rock in Los Angeles. Listeners loved the song, but one comment that kept coming up again and again was that the singer in the chorus sounded too urban. Morai would tell Q, "I'll never forget the day I found out what urban meant. A lot of people liked the song, but a couple of people called to say the singer sounds a little urban. The singer sounds a little urban." I'm like, what does urban mean? I live in a Montreal suburb. It takes me 45 minutes to ride the bus downtown to Montreal. And then when I finally asked enough, the answer was, it's black. It means black. But as Morai saw it, Bran Van 3000 was simply a cross-section of the types of people who lived in Montreal. As a result of the feedback the song received, the label didn't include Morai in any of the promotional materials or photos of the group. Even at one point, it was suggested by the label that the song be re-recorded with someone who sounded, and I quote, more white, with her adding to Q, "It cuts you like a knife because here you are doing everything right, and you have the song and you have the voice. You're singing every show perfectly as you can, and the door still doesn't open." She would, however, meet with somebody from the group's Canadian label in private that she wasn't included in any promos for the group because it came down to a business decision. The song would end up being a top 10 hit in numerous countries in Europe. It was a top 40 hit in Canada and got a good amount of buzz in the States. The fallout from the song, though, would create some bad blood between her and DeSalvo, but 25 years after the hit came out, in 2022, the pair finally cleared the air. The band have since released 5 more albums since Glee, but they never matched the success of their debut album. As for Morai, she works in Montreal as an entertainment lawyer. Fun fact you guys may not know about her is that she also dipped her toe in Canadian politics, running as a candidate in the New Democratic Party for the federal election back in 2011, but she was unsuccessful in winning a seat. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics, use the link in the description box below, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.